1st September 1939. Germany invades Poland. The great nightmare of World War II has begun. This particular event will be remembered by the great Germany citizens as a day of a new beginning of the 1,000 Years Reich. It is 10th anniversary of winning the war, the last war that Germans had to fight. Lebensraum is secured. Slavs pushed into the east. Jews' problem solved. The Führer himself had come to take part in the parade of the Great German Reich. But how did the Germans manage to win the war? We have to go back in time to the August 23rd, 1942, the day glorious Battle of Stalingrad started. This strategically important location, if captured by Wehrmacht forces, will allow Germans to conquer Caucasian oil fields and thus being able to continue war against the Soviet Union. In this timeline, the results of battle would be different. In our history, Wehrmacht overestimated its potential and tried to deal 2 blows at a time, one to the Caucasus to take Azerbaijani oil and a second on Stalingrad. The Germans dispersed their forces. As Major General Hans Dörr later wrote, Stalingrad has to enter history as the greatest mistake ever committed by military commanders, as the greatest disdain to the live organism of the army ever demonstrated by the leadership of the country. In alternative history I made, the German forces were concentrated at August 23, 1942, with its full potential and best generals available. Russians defending the city would be terrified of the enormous German army sieging the city. Eventually, after 5 long months of exhaustion, hunger, constant artillery and bombers' fire, the fortress city itself, Stalingrad, capitulated at 25th of December. This day will be known as the historic moment that could have changed the result of the war. After the battle, morale of Soviet army and society were shattered, Caucasian strategic resources secured by Germans, and Wehrmacht army had been preparing for the new spring invasion starting at March 3, 1943, so-called Operation Hungry Bear, aimed to capture Leningrad, Moscow, and cut European Russia in half, making strike attack to the White Sea, cutting Allies' reinforcements for Soviet Union. Exactly as planned, 5 years-long operation started in March. Millions of infantry, tanks, planes, and other mechanized divisions launched massive attack. For the first phase there were 3 targets: Leningrad, Archangельsk, and finally, Moscow. Earliest win was surprisingly in Moscow, after 14 months of constant fights. At the 5th of May, 1945, Stalin decided to flee the city and burn it all. It resulted in a great panic as well as leaving the city in ruins. 3 months later, German army captured Archangельsk, and finally at the 23rd of December, 1945, the Leningrad surrendered, because of hunger, no reinforcements, and almost 90% manpower losses. Germans were victorious and they celebrated New Year in Moscow, planning further expansion. On April 1946, the final invasion of the Soviet Union begun. It have taken 3 years for German army to fully push the Soviets behind Ural Mountains, but they did it. Joseph Stalin, to save his rule, signed a peace on May 4, 1949 and tried to save his regime. Germans had won. But I think some questions may have occurred in your mind. What happened to the Western Allies? During the war, Hitler, advised by his greatest military commanders, decided to build massive fortifications along German and Dutch coast, as well as sending their huge amounts of soldiers after conquering Moscow. Because of that, Western powers decided to make a white peace, and this happened on January 1, 1948. This video took me a long time to make. In next week there will be part 2. Please give me your feedback and comment. This was History Revamped. To the next video.